There's a manual. It's distributed to every new recruit at the Null Horizon Authority. It's 347 pages long. It is, by reputation, the most read government document on the planet, which is funny because nobody's allowed to talk about it. It begins with definitions, 5 of them. Today, we go through them. If you're new, I'm Marcus Zane. I write the Man Behind the Veil series, and on this channel I open up the world around the books. Episode 1 was about the Mantle Militia, bounty hunters who work outside the law. Episode 2 was about the Null Horizon Authority, the institution that officially makes the law. Today we're talking about what they're both chasing, the thing the whole universe runs on, the reason any of these factions exist. We're talking about Xenos. Quick housekeeping, because vocabulary matters here. Xeno with an X, from the Greek, meaning foreign, alien, other. The NHA chose the word deliberately, and it's the only word they use. They don't say monsters. They don't say creatures. They don't say entities, except occasionally on intake reports. They say Xenos, singular Xeno, plural Xenos. And the word is doing work. Let me tell you what a Xeno is by telling you what a Xeno is not. A Xeno is not technically supernatural. The NHA hates that word. The whole point of the Authority is that they treat these things as natural. Just natural in a way the rest of the scientific community hasn't caught up to yet. A Xeno is not technically paranormal, same reason. And a Xeno is not, in the strictest internal definition, from somewhere else. This is the bit that surprises people. The Authority does not assume Xenos come from another planet, another dimension, another timeline. They might. Some of them probably do. But the Authority's working definition is more careful than that. In the field manual, the operating definition reads, and I'm paraphrasing because the manual is fictional and I get to do that, a Xeno is something that does not belong to this timeline. Read that twice. Because it's not the same as saying it came from somewhere else. It's saying wherever it's from, it shouldn't be here, now. The geometry of reality has, for whatever reason, included it. And the Authority's job is to figure out what to do about that. That definition will become important in about 4 minutes. The NHA classifies every Xeno they catch into one of 5 tiers. The tiers are progressive, meaning each one is more dangerous, more unstable, and more influential than the one below it. From bottom to top, Dormant class, Veiled class, Fracture class, Null Break class, Prime class. Dormant at the base, Prime at the apex. Each tier represents not just a level of threat, but a different category of what's wrong with reality near this thing. The taxonomy isn't really about the Xenos themselves. It's about how badly they bend the world around them. We're going to walk through each one, briefly, without spoilers. So, Dormant class, the bottom of the pyramid, the biggest population by far. These are Xenos that, by the manual's definition, do not currently exhibit anomalous behavior. The wording is careful. It doesn't say they're harmless. It doesn't say they can't do anything. It says, right now, today, in their current state, they're not doing anything you'd notice. In practice, these are the Xenos you would most likely walk past on the street and never know. Some of them have been dormant for centuries. Some of them have lived among humans, in some cases as functional members of society, since before the NHA was founded. There's a passage in Book 2, and I'm not spoiling anything by mentioning this. It happens on Marcus's first day, where he's walking through a Sable Meridian facility, and he passes a dining hall. Tables, staff, people eating lunch, and among the people eating lunch, Dormant class Xenos, sitting at the tables, eating food, carrying on conversations. The Authority does not lock up its Dormant class population. It doesn't need to. They're not, by current behavior, a threat. They're employees, they're consultants, in some cases, they're senior staff. You will not, in this episode, find out how a Dormant class Xeno gets food into a body that is, by all NHA documentation, not actually constructed the way human bodies are constructed. Read the books. It's strange. Next, Veiled class. Tier 2. This is where most of the actual fieldwork in the books happens. A Veiled class Xeno is one whose anomalous behavior is active but containable. They do something. The thing they do is reproducible. The thing they do can be observed, measured, studied, and either neutralized or, in some cases, used. The range here is extraordinary. There's a passage in Book 2 where Marcus learns that the bottled water served to NHA strike teams is actually purified through a Veiled class hydration anomaly, molecular level filtration that adapts to whatever the drinker's body needs. The Authority drinks weaponized Xeno water, casually, as policy. On the other end of the Veiled spectrum, there's a Xeno designated X-3530, which Marcus encounters in a long-abandoned prison. Veiled class, active. Documented effects include cognitive interference, induced disorientation, and a respiratory response in human context that resembles severe asthma. People who spend too long near it forget what they came for. People who spend longer than that come back wrong. Both of those are Veiled class. The water and the prison ghost. Same tier, wildly different consequences. The defining feature of a veiled class Xeno is not what it does. It's that the authority has watched it long enough to write up the file. Veiled means observed. Veiled means studied. Veiled means we know what this is, and we know what it does, and we have a protocol for it. Most of the Xenos in NHA containment are veiled. Most of the Xenos the books describe in detail are veiled. If a strike team gets called out and the briefing officer is calm, you can usually assume veiled. Next, fracture class, tier 3. This is where the authority stops being comfortable. A fracture class Xeno is one whose behavior has exceeded its profile. The authority has it on file. The authority has studied it. The authority has presumably contained it. And then, at some point, it does something the file did not predict. It stops being veiled. The veil cracks. The thing fractures out of the category the authority had put it in. In NHA radio traffic, you will sometimes hear the phrase fracture class breach. That's not a Xeno designation. That's an event. It means a Xeno that was on file as veiled has done something veiled is not supposed to do. The classification has been escalated in real time while the strike team is still on site. Fracture class events are, statistically, where most NHA personnel deaths occur. Not because fracture class Xenos are the most dangerous in absolute terms. That's not what the tier means. They're dangerous because the team showed up expecting one thing and got something else. The authority's whole system is built on the idea that information is power. Fracture class is what happens when the information is wrong. Null break class. Tier 4. This is where the language of the manual changes. The earlier tiers are described in behavioral terms. What it does, what it can do, what it has been observed to do. Null break class entries are described in physical terms. What it is doing to local reality, what contact with it costs. There's a Xeno designated X1480 that appears in Book 2, Null break class. The briefing on it is, and I'm paraphrasing, corrosive touch. Anything it makes contact with begins to degrade on a molecular level. An auditory weaponization, its screech can cause immediate deafening at peak output. Read those two attributes again. This is not a creature with abilities. This is a creature whose existence is incompatible with materials and sound waves continuing to behave normally in the same room. Null break class Xenos do not generally get studied at length. They get contained when they can be contained. They get neutralized when they can be neutralized. The authority has standing protocols specifically for sensory-based null break defense mechanisms. There's a passage where a strike team commander explicitly orders no weapons drawn, no movement, no noise, because, quote, all of that contributes to instability, especially in a null break class exhibiting sensory-based defense mechanisms. If veiled class is what the NHA studies, and fracture class is what the NHA fears, null break class is what the NHA negotiates with. Finally, prime class, the top tier. And here's where I have to be honest with you about how the books handle this category, because the answer is almost not at all. Prime class is mentioned in the field manual. It's named. It's the top of the classification pyramid. In Book 2, Marcus reads through the entire manual in an afternoon and notes that the prime class section exists. He does not, in Book 2, get told what makes a Xeno prime class. The manual does not specify. Glenn does not explain. The orientation does not cover it. There is, on Marcus's first day, a tier of Xeno he has been told exists, and that he is not yet allowed to know the specifics of. There's a single phrase the manual uses when it discusses what happens if a prime class Xeno is ever active. The phrase is prime level lockdown. That's a different word from anything else in the manual. Other tiers get strike teams, other tiers get containment, other tiers get protocols. Prime class gets a lockdown, meaning presumably that the authority's entire posture changes, that the regional hubs stop their normal operations, that the question is no longer how do we capture this, but how do we survive long enough for it to stop. To my knowledge, speaking strictly within the canon of what's been published so far, there has not, in the modern history of the authority, been a confirmed active prime class Xeno. Prime class is the tier that exists in case the authority has to. Now, we come to the part of the episode where I have to tell you what Marcus notices on his first day. Marcus reads the entire field manual in an afternoon. The whole thing. 347 pages. And the moment he finishes it, he goes back to the beginning and starts reading it again. And his recruiter, a man named Glenn, comes into his quarters and finds him reading the manual a second time and asks him what he's looking for. And Marcus says, patterns. Glenn laughs. Glenn tells him there are no hidden messages in the manual. Glenn tells him it's a field manual, designed to get people up to speed. And Marcus tells Glenn, I know, that's not what I mean. What Marcus means, and this is the line that has lived rent-free in my head since I wrote it, is that the manual is, quote, too clean. The information is straightforward, organized, efficient. But it's also, and I'm quoting Marcus directly, curated. Whoever wrote the manual didn't just want people to understand the NHA. They wanted people to understand it in a specific way. The classifications, the tiers, the Greek letter precision of the language, all of it is doing more than informing. It's shaping how the reader interprets the information. Glenn, when he hears Marcus say this, smiles and says, "You're going to fit in just fine here," which, when you turn it over a few times, is its own kind of reveal. Last thing before we close. The thing I will tell you, because it's not a spoiler, it's just a feature of the world. There are 5 tiers: Dormant, Veiled, Fracture, Nullbreak, Prime, and there are Xenos in this universe that, by the Authority's own internal admission, don't fit any of them. I am not telling you which Xenos. I'm not telling you why they don't fit. I'm not telling you what the Authority does with the ones that don't fit, or what the Authority calls them when they don't fit, or whether the Authority even tells the strike teams when they're being deployed against one. What I will tell you is this: the taxonomy is curated. And the gaps in a curated taxonomy are not accidents. They're choices. Read the books, you'll see what I mean. That's the field guide. 5 tiers. Dormant, the ones who eat lunch with you. Veiled, the ones the Authority has on file. Fracture, the ones whose files are wrong. Nullbreak, the ones the manual describes in physical terms. Prime, the tier that exists in case. The full classification system is in book 2. The orientation scene runs about 40 pages. If you want to see Marcus actually read the manual and notice what he notices, that's where to start. Subscribe if you want more lore drops. The next one, I'm thinking we go down a level into the strike teams, the agents who actually deploy on Veiled and Fracture class events, what a Bravo team is, what a Delta team is, why Marcus, in book 3, gets put in charge of one, and what happened to the team commander who was in the role before him. I'm Marcus Zane. Thanks for watching.